Hey friends, I'm Christy and you're listening to Rock the Damn Boat. If you've ever bitten your tongue to keep the peace or said yes when every part of you wanted to say no, this one's for you. We're diving into the messy, real stuff that people pleasers like me have spent years avoiding. It's time to have the hard conversations, shake things up, and learn to stand tall, even when it makes waves. Okay, friends, I didn't really get camera ready today. I wanted to hop on hot off the press with the results of the diagnostics that I talked about in last week's Sunday Shortie. And if you listened to that episode, then you know that I drove to Fort Worth from our tiny little town of Walnut Springs and took a full workup. I have shared that menopause and the hormonal changes that are happening in my body seem to exacerbate symptoms that resembled ADHD, at least from what I was seeing out in social media. I appreciate that women my age are talking more and more about ADHD and menopause. And both of those things we can be very out loud about, just like I am, because there's no shame. You learn that you're not alone. I was very interested in learning exactly what was going on with me because early in my teens, 20s, 30s, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. I took antidepressants for years, did talk therapy, group therapy, various forms of managing my depression symptoms. Now, I did have one doctor tell me, one out of the multiple doctors that I saw, that, hey, you might want to think about your alcohol use because alcohol is a depressant and it is not doing you any favors. Did I listen to him? No. But now in hindsight, I'm thinking, okay, he was right, because when I stopped drinking 7.5 years ago, almost 8 years ago now, my symptoms completely shifted. And I was no longer depressed all the time. I didn't cry all the time. I wasn't hopeless. I actually became very hopeful and started doing all of these amazing side projects and passion projects at the time. And I kind of took on this whole different mindset, but it also created these different challenges. And I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. And with both of these, I had always gone to, a family practice doctor, GP, to diagnose me with GAD, generalized anxiety disorder. And I switched to a medication that was better suited for that. So for the past 8 years, I have been managing my anxiety symptoms through both medication as well as, of course, mindfulness practices like sitting in the morning, journaling, reading, having some quiet time before, like not just jumping right into my day, because that's how I used to function and how a lot of us do, right? We just roll out of bed, hit the ground running, start our day. I spend the better part of 60 or 90 minutes sitting quietly, reading, processing for the day, often journaling, although not always. And I was doing this even when I had a full-time job and the yoga studio. This was a part of my day that I protected no matter what. I've shared before that it started, more than 10 years ago when I was living in Phoenix, Arizona, and the sun came up at like 4:30 a.m. during the summer. So I was always awake, became this precious morning routine that I always wanted to protect and still do today. That helps with my anxiety. Yoga helps with my anxiety. Kundalini yoga specifically, I love because it has a huge somatic component to it. Well, the forgetfulness really started to ramp up. And of course, it's easy to say, I'm 50, I'm going through menopause, or I am postmenopausal. I have definitely gone through hormonal changes that affect how my mind is working. And I own that, and I'm not anti-aging. I'm not out there trying to deny that I'm getting older and that things are going to happen. I remember my mom and my aunt talking about CRS disease. Can't remember squat. And of course, that's not what they said, but what's funny is my mom doesn't remember that. Other little things stuck in my memory, like seeing a commercial for adult onset ADHD way back when. I mean, this was probably 8-9 years ago, before we were even talking about it. I remember Wentworth Miller, the actor, going public with his autism diagnosis and thinking, that's interesting. So there's little clues that my brain honed in on. I was realizing that my symptoms were not necessarily just the same anxiety symptoms that I've been challenged with for the past 7-8 years. I found an office that I thought for sure was not going to take insurance. They're a little private practice in the Metroplex. And if you're interested in their information, please reach out to me privately. I'm happy to share it. They've been an amazing office to work with. But I decided to reach out to them. They do take insurance. They took my insurance. So my part of this extensive screening was just under $300. And that's still a big chunk of change. I get it. But I didn't want to keep dealing with these symptoms and be on a medication that was not addressing the problems that I was having currently. So I went Monday, spent 3 hours in this office, was told it would take up to 2 weeks for results, and I got my PDF today. So we are hot off the press going to talk about my diagnosis and some of the information I found out, which is very interesting. I'm looking at the list of evaluation methods, and it is long. There are probably 35 different screenings and includes the observation and the interview. I interviewed with the doctor for about an hour. 2 hours of screening that was everything from matching the next logical pattern to naming off all of the fruits and vegetables that I could think of, to hearing a story and having to recite the story back to the person who was giving me the test. I had to draw certain things. It was really interesting and overwhelming. And at times I felt really stupid. And there were parts where the patterns were so complex that I thought, if people are able to answer these, then what is wrong with me? And in reality, if you were to score very high on those more complex problems, then it probably relates to something different. A lot of this brought up the movie Rain Man for me. It was like an idiot savant, right? So there are certain people who can remember all kinds of things in specific categories, and it might be that that type of brain could solve these complex problems. And during that assessment, that part of the assessment where I was looking at these different colored stars and squares and circles, all I could think about was Bill Murray in the movie Ghostbusters. And there's a scene, I think it's toward the beginning, and he's testing people's ESP abilities. So he's holding a card and it's got, say, a red star on it. And somebody hooked up to electrodes on the other side is supposed to let him know if they can read what's on the card. And of course they can't see it. So be like, oh, it's a red star. Okay, they have psychic abilities. There is a pretty woman and a dorky man, both hooked up to the electrodes. And the pretty woman gets it wrong all the time. Bill Murray never shocks her. And then the dorky guy might get it right, and he shocks him just to be a jerk. That's how the scene goes in my mind. It's funny when I think about memory retention and ADHD that I can remember scenes of movies that I saw 30 years ago, but then I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday. But my mind wandered during that test. And that was where it went, was to that scene in Ghostbusters. So of course, I probably bombed that section of the test. I have not read through all 26 pages of my PDF yet, so who knows. But I'll have to figure out if I can determine my score on that one specifically. But I did all of this testing, got my results back today. My official diagnosis is generalized anxiety disorder, GAD, not surprising, that's what I've been diagnosed with for the better part of 10 years, and ADHD, primarily inattentive. I am not surprised based on the symptoms that I'm having currently, but it's interesting thinking back to my entire life and how that might have presented in childhood. And I was looking at a Brown University Health article about ADHD and why the diagnosis of ADHD is rising. So the diagnosis is rising, not necessarily the condition itself. Now, first of all, of course, the DSM-5 is 5 because there have been multiple iterations. So they continue to progress in the diagnostic tools available. Insurance coverage, different things that make that more accessible to more people. There's more awareness, so you can hop on social media, just like all the algorithm serves me up these days are neurodivergent material. I did not meet anything around the autism criteria, which is fine. I didn't necessarily want a certain diagnosis. What I wanted was a way to understand my brain functioning better and what to do from here to make my life a little bit easier. From there, I started reading about my specific type of ADHD. So inattentive, and I'm going to grab my phone because I sent my mom a couple of screenshots to tell her, what I was learning as I went. Because like I said, obviously this has been present for me my entire life, but not necessarily something that I was aware of. With predominantly inattentive ADHD, that would have been considered ADD pre-1994. So again, they've changed the diagnostics, the terminology, everything. Children with this type of ADHD often seem off in their own world. Definitely, I was daydreaming. I was writing poetry. I was lost in books all the time. It says that girls are more likely to have this type, which means it's often missed or misdiagnosed. Many parents describe these children as sweet but scattered. So I asked my mom, was I sweet but scattered? And she said, yes, I would describe you that way. Kids with inattentive ADHD tend to be more quietly anxious or self-critical, as opposed to kids with hyperactivity type, which be external acting out. So quietly anxious or self-critical. I was very critical of myself. I journaled in my teens that I'm just not worth it. My mom said she would try so hard to encourage me, but I didn't want to hear what they had to say. I did not believe my parents when they said they were proud of me or when they complimented me. It was more important for my peers to be accepting of me, and I discounted everything my parents said, despite their desire to be very supportive and loving. So I was very self-critical. That has carried with it. Like when I think about that, I just thought it was a personality trait, that I did not give myself credit where credit is due, that I was a perfectionist. And I'm not saying that those qualities aren't there, those perfectionist tendencies, but now I know that they are driven by wiring in my brain. It says, with understanding and support, most kids with ADHD thrive. They're often creative, energetic, and big picture thinkers once their environment fits their brain. So, that's what I'm here to do, is to figure out ways to operate that fit my wiring. The great thing about this assessment is towards the end, it gave a ton of tips, and I'll also be meeting with a doctor to continue to work through, what all I've learned. But it talked about using ChatGPT to organize tasks, to dictate my entire unfiltered stream of consciousness, including worries, to-do, and creative ideas, and ask it to extract only the top 3 priorities for the day based on energy levels and deadlines. Little did I know that this was ADHD related. I have already been doing this. And I think part of it is that I told ChatGPT that I suspected I had ADHD. So she has framed a lot of her results back to me in ways that are ADHD friendly. It talks about verbalizing things, because my biggest source of shame is all of the things that I forget throughout the day. So I will take out the trash and I leave the trash bin open without putting a liner in it. I'll walk off and leave the can of dog food on the counter. I will start laundry and go back and find it the next day, still in the washer and with a little bit of a mildew smell. Those are things that I can continue to work on how to stay in the moment. And one of the things that it suggested was saying, I am starting laundry out loud, saying, I am putting the clothes from the washer into the dryer out loud. I was telling my friend that it gives a little bit of Silence of the Lambs vibes, but if I have to put the lotion in the basket to remember that the lotion is in the basket, that is what I will do. So we'll see how all of this goes. It's exciting because it's affirmation that I am not falling down on the job. Because one of the things, and I'm looking right at it here, it says, currently, Christy's intelligence allows her to hold many spinning plates at once, but this mental juggling act fuels anxiety and drains the energy needed for execution. I love being a creator of ideas, and I love seeing things through, like yoga studio ownership, like being able to manage that for 2 years and then being able to organize the festival on top of it. Those are huge feats. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of 8 years of sobriety. There are things that I have had a lot of tenacity with in my life. And starting coaching around my Thrive model, which the T is for tenacity, those are qualities, tenacity, resilience. Those are things that I have worked on. And so now I know that, yes, I can excel at certain activities, certain ways of doing things. I just have to sort of filter out the other junk. I tend to fill my mind with a lot of different ideas. Not every idea that comes to my mind is a good one. Not every idea needs to be executed. Not every idea needs my attention right at that moment. And so that's really the piece of it that I want to start working on first, is what do I need to prioritize and what else can fall away? Because one of the things that I've learned, both from talking to other people with ADHD and from some of this information that I'm reading, your brain sort of stays on all the time, processing things in the background. So it is just like me trying to participate in a test right on an iPad right in front of me to figure out what shapes mean in these certain patterns, and thinking about a scene from Ghostbusters. So my brain is going into completely different directions at the same time. I am excited to learn more about this. I will not talk ad nauseum about this diagnosis on this podcast, but I do think that as Gen X women start to hit menopause and our brains start to change dramatically because of the hormone changes and the hormone shifts, that we are going to see this become more and more prevalent, that now we have the tools to go get diagnosed, to understand what's going on with our brain chemistry that is creating this really volatile combination with our hormones. It's like our brain and our endocrine system are sort of at odds with each other at this phase of life. How can we take that clash out of it and learn to just operate in a different way? I think that is the exciting piece of it from here, is that the more we talk about it and the more information and studies and research that are done, the more we can learn how to function in new and different ways. So let me know if you are a recently diagnosed ADHDer. I would love to hear more about what your experience was like. You can find me on Instagram, either at Rock the Damn Boat or at Thrive Christy Hughes. You can always check out what I'm offering at thrivewithchristy.com. And I am excited to talk to you again soon. We have some experts on these topics coming up on the pod, so you'll want to follow and subscribe. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Rock the Damn Boat, a podcast produced and recorded by Christy Hughes. You can follow, subscribe on both Apple and Spotify, and your 5-star review goes a long way. Thank you so much for your support of the show.